Translating Formscapes into Practices. Part 1. Any idea can be translated into physical, energetic, emotional, mental, social, psychic or spiritual practices. And conversely, any practice of these different natures can be translated into mental practices or mental content. The practice is the actual moving aspect, the change aspect, the flow aspect of an idea. The idea is the information or mind aspect. And what something is, its matter, structure, form, will be the matter aspect, the form aspect, the shape aspect. So transposing practices from one aspect to another may seem very strange at first, or may even seem absurd. These things are not, we're taught things in a box, so each field is completely separate from the other. You're very seldom taught mathematics through sports or through building things, although many good teachers feel the use and the need of transposing and translating things to put them into context, to show that the ideas of theoretical informations and concepts that you can learn at school are not just empty and completely devoid of any practical application in outer everyday life. For what interests us, we'll start with a very simple aspect. Before translating from mental to physical, from information to matter, energy, we'll start by translating and transposing from one aspect or one layer of information to another. So for instance, anything that can be done with your perception can be extended to your awareness, attention, and to the small aspect of what we call consciousness. So when I focus my attention on something, I can at the same time train my eyes to focalize, to fix something, concentrate information, get a lot of information about few things or a little space. And I can train, conversely, my consciousness to focus on one point, to reach the one-pointedness that's sought after in things like yoga. So let's try that. Focus on the tip of your fingers. Bring it closer until you reach visual aberration and things become blurry. Now take one hand and use it as as a sort of microscope. You limit the field of your perception so that you can get more and more information. You go against the aberration by closing one eye, and then you get to the smallest aperture to get the more focused set of information you can get. When you reach that point, you do the exact opposite. You start opening your hand slowly, increase the field of sight, then open the second eye, get back the aberration, then move your finger away from you, still fixing the tip of it, and then all of a sudden look past the finger. So when you look behind the finger, you'll see it double and blur at the same time. And if you see what happens when you look past something you're focused on, all of a sudden it becomes a part of the context, it becomes a part of the background. While at the beginning it was the form appearing on the background, now it's part of the common blur that makes the background. And most likely your mind will try to focus on something further away. And you could repeat the very same practice, not needing to bring the object closer, but just focusing on whatever your brain decided to get fixed upon. Make it smaller and smaller and smaller, and then go beyond it until you reach the horizon. The same principle applied now to energy practices. We'll take a finger. Before you get to energy practices, you can actually translate from one sense organ to another. So you can go from hearing, you could go from sight to hearing, but now we'll go through touch. You touch the center of your hand with your finger. It's the Laogong point here, but it could be anything else. And now you focalize your sense of touch, meaning you bring all your attention to what's happening just at the point of contact of your finger and your other hand. And you get more and more and more focused. So you can close your eyes, closing one's eyes or closing one's ears. Removing any sense is a way to divert its energy for another use. When you fairly practiced in these things, it's sufficient to just bring your awareness somewhere. So you focus on the tip of one finger, point of contact, all informations you can gather there, the texture, temperature, shapes, movements, pulsation, rhythms. Then you get to the actual point of contact in the end, and you include all three. You can also try to go to the center of the tip of the finger, so the center of the felt sensation, and then the center of the center and so on and so on. This aspect is quite important because we think of things in a static manner most of the time, in terms of states. So when we think about focusing, we think about being focused or being focalized on something. Or when we think about meditation and these type of things, we think about being relaxed or being in such or such state of consciousness. Now, the problem with it is that we miss the flow. We miss what Bergson was calling le mouvant, the moving, the flowing, the fluid, the changing. In Bergson's terms, you could say that the rational mind, by its very name, by its very nature, is made to break down pieces of the entire experience or field of consciousness and compare them with others to get a ratio, to get a proportion, a portion of something for another thing. So it's both a division and a comparison. When we extract from the world one such aspect, to compare it to a unit of measure or to prior experiences and whatnot, we lose the life, the actual living flow of anything. You can look at one place on the bank of a river and you focus on what's happening there. And then you think that this is the actual river, this glimpse. And this glimpse is always changing on its own. But you never understand the direction, the actual origination, motivation, motor force, and the destination, the ending, the end point, finality of a river. Similarly, when we take whatever experience to put it under the microscope of the mental mind, we lose the actual lifeblood of what's happening. So the best analogy for it would be what happened in medicine. Medicine, materialist Western medicine, for all its amazing discoveries, wonders, whatnot, the way of practicing it at one point, which is still the way biology is taught or was taught not so long ago. So basically, to study life, you kill it, you chop it down into pieces, and you try to see how they react. Or you capture it, you basically kidnap it, and you will sequester it in a cage or something, and you'll torture it, or you'll submit it to your will, and which most of the time will go pretty much against its own. By doing so, what we did for the body, for instance, was using scalpels to cut down at what we started to call muscle insertions. And when you cut things precisely like this, the entire body becomes a very obvious machine. You see the levers, you see the actual ropes, contracting ropes that can activate these rigid levers of the skeleton. The only problem is that all the information you get from the dead body are not what you would actually see if you could be inside of something while it is changing, evolving, adapting, moving, flowing, second after second. And even second after second is already a way of thinking that segments and breaks down things. So the idea of, very simply put, one of the ideas that you can find in some philosophies like Bergson's, or in other ways like Alfred North Whitehead, the few other people, is what I call the art fluid, the fluid arts, or the fluid point of view, the flowing point of view. And Bergson called this direct prehension of the flowing, the moving, intuition, for lack of maybe a better word. The changing was called by Whitehead processes instead of beings. Things were thought of as processes, dynamics, constant fields of potentialities, of prehensions. Things could interact together, and that's what gave them their beingness. Not a sort of fixed and crystallized and isolated content of matter. Now again, we can transpose the way of thinking and the way of perceiving. Because, as odd as it may sound, what we call analytic thinking, breaking down into smaller pieces, and reductionist thinking can be directly related to focal perception, concentrated perception. When I focus on an object, the first thing that appears is its silhouette, its border, its delimitation, its definition, finesse, the border, the actual marks of the border in Latin. When I think in what we call mechanically, I'm using one type of perception. When I see in peripheral vision, so peripheral vision would be what happened when you look past the finger. It's the opening of a field of vision. The name itself would imply, as I mentioned in another video, a type of movement that's the opposite of a concentrating movement of focalization. So this one would be pushing the borders outwards. So you're forcing the field of vision out. And a lot of the attention would be towards this end of the field of vision. Another type of perception is the distribution of perception. So there you equalize the feeling of attention that you have for all the things over an area. So you're not pushing outwards, you're distributing attention, awareness or perception inside. Another type still would be the decentralization, which would mean that instead of bringing all the awareness, all the attention to one spot, you distribute it between 2, 3, 4. Then you could have orders of attention, something you put more of your attention on and others less. So that's when you use consciousness, that's what we'll call anchoring, which is different from the anchoring you would do in hypnosis, for instance. The anchoring in hypnosis will be a way, it's like a trigger, it's a way of accessing a state by attaching to it other stimuli and reenacting or reactivating those stimuli to get part of or the entirety of what has been registered, what has been memorized with it. But the type of anchoring that I mentioned is really more related to what you do when you're using a sailboat or using any boat. You put your awareness on something and then you anchor part of your awareness to this thing. The flows, the currents of your perception will push you away, the same way the wind and the currents would move the boat. But the anchoring is, again, not a static thing. You are not anchored in absolute, meaning you won't move. It's a dynamic, it's a process, it's an action. The fact of being anchored means that you will be brought towards the anchor again and again. You drift and you move back when you reach the leash that you kept for yourself. So now let's apply this feeling of touch and shift it to what we call energy work. So energy work at first will be just the ability to feel instead of states, flows or movements, potentialities for change. And the first type of flows that you'll be able to feel could be your breath. So initially you look for, or you touch for, the shift, the inner shift of pressure that sends a wave into all the soft tissues, and this wave of pressure coming from the lungs and the rib cage will reach or does reach all other places in your body. Now, whether you can feel it or not depends only on the state of your corridors of information. So you can picture an hospital. You have many people shouting in the corridors, many people moving, and then you have silent voices. The information carried by the silent voices, or the voices that express themselves very timidly or very low, is present in exactly the same way as the information carried and expressed by those who shout. The only difference is that you cannot hear it. You cannot hear it because you're focused entirely on the biggest stimuli, biggest core of your awareness. Say it could be pain, it could be mental obsessions or whatnot. So now the process of listening to smaller voices is simply quieting down the noise. And this can be done in two manners. You can actually calm down the voices by attending to the wounds or bringing care, attention. But this is not so easy. The other one is to use your mind as a tuning console. So it's like you're doing the sounds in a concert, or you're on your computer or whatnot, and you can decide to mute or to tune down some frequencies so that others can appear. And you can mute entire frequencies that you do not want as parasites on your soundtrack. So all the things that technologies do, technologies being externalizations and extensions of inner capabilities via the use of external means. This movement can be reversed. You can re-internalize abilities that were provided by external means. So this may seem quite hard, but picture something very simple. You see GIS, like Geographic Information System, for instance, on a computer. You've seen it once. Or you've seen mind mapping and then zooming in all the type of things that you could see with augmented reality in movies. So someone spreads information, puts it there, and then clicks and zooms in or shifts, and you get another layer of the GIS system. Once you get, so if you go to more low-tech stuff, you do permaculture design or any other type of design, and you start using transparent paper so that you can lay information related to one domain. So buildings or pathways, or it could be related to one element. So you could have what's the name of the translucid layer for fire, which would be light, heat, and actual fire. Another one for earth, another one for water, another one for life, and another one for air, winds, whatnot. And you could draw them and use them separately, but then you can combine two of these themes to see their interactions. So you could put a layer of buildings and roads and hedgerows, for instance, and other layer of water. The more you put, the more saturated your field of information will be. So a map that would contain all information, if it were possible. would be actually entirely dark. You would see nothing. You couldn't use it. In the same way, the mental mind has only, and you can dissect things only to a point, and you can observe things that you focus on only to the limits of your attention. You can spread these limits by training, but it will still be an allocation of energy and information and awareness. So the other way around would be to actually intuit the darkness, what we mentioned before, but that gives you absolutely nothing your mind can grasp. It gives you no comprehension. Your field of awareness is blended with this sea of potential informations that are not isolated, not separated. The ability to shift from focal to peripheral is the same as the ability to shift from analytic mind to what you'd call systemic mind. Systemic would be the decentralized system, meaning a system is just a more complicated machine. So the mechanistic approach that's often deprecated due to its after effects nowadays. We tend to push for replacement by system thinking, but systems would only be a bigger and more complex set of machinery. It's still a sort of an algorithmic way of thinking. It's not getting closer to the flow, for instance. Past this systemic, you'd get to what would be called holistic. So holistic would involve even more things, not only systems of information, and then you'd get to completely different fields. So now, if I haven't lost you yet, transposition of one capability from one specific part of a level or a classification. I use information, I understand one thing, focalizing, I translate or transpose what I can feel and get from focalizing using my eyes to my hearing, to my smelling, tasting, touching, and I can nourish it. The more skilled I get into focalizing with my eyes, the more tricks I'll get on how to use my nervous system or my awareness, my states of consciousness and whatnot, to actually lock onto, say, a noise and stick to it. So the training for this would be, if I, instead of training my senses, I was training my attention, I would use some of the common trainings in meditation, where you get the flame of a candle, for instance, and you fix your gaze on it and you stick to it for as long as you can. Or you can do the same with just fixing one point and anchoring your awareness and your attention there. So as soon as you drift away, you become aware of your drift and you get back without fighting, without punishing you or judging, which would be moving even further away. So it's much more simple than that. You set an anchor somewhere with an intention of getting back or not moving too far away from this place. The maximum length would be the length of the chain of your anchor. And you sort of go back and forth. You stick to something, you lose it. Become aware of it. When you become aware of it, there's this pull of the chain dragging you back to a place, and you get back. There are many other ways of using perception and awareness. From one spot, you could distribute your awareness to 2 or 3 things at the same time. And these things could be external or internal. So for instance, one point of focus, internal, very common, would be your breath. The point of focus doesn't describe the depth of the focus or the quality of the awareness. You can watch one thing and actually see very little of it. So this would be yet another field of inquiry and practice. But for now, if you get your mind to stick to your breath, in the same way you used your touch, without straining, without intention, slowly you get more and more and more information. Temperature of the air, how far you feel your breath, small jolts or segmentations of your breath that will signal difficulties in the flow linked to tensions, most likely. All these things would appear over time, just by you being there and paying attention. In very much the same way as you see a cat on a balcony looking outside. You do not need to strain yourself to connect to your surrounding and get to know it. It's due to our culture, this seems nigh impossible, far-fetched feat of legendary masters, but it's actually your inbuilt design. It's just not meaning anything peculiar, but any animal that had to survive in the wild had to connect. Death and predation are the main they are what I called compulsory connection. You put snipers around, everybody will be connected. You put drones, bombs, everybody will start to recognize the sound, the distance, the signs, the silence, the what, all these things. We can move around entirely disconnected from what happens inside and outside due to the appearance of complete safety, which is a very, very strong illusion. And in many ways it's a dead end, because the full safety we look for, the safety of not losing one's material life, or all the stuff and all the matter that we associate with me, mine. The only way of not losing it is to have lost them already. So the only way of feeling completely secure is that nothing can happen, that no change, no stroke, I don't get the blows because I wear my armor, but out of not getting the strikes and the blows, I don't get the kisses and the strokes, the caress. I don't get the blows of life if I secure a wall big enough so that I do not get to experience life. The entire, and this again, we'll get back to it, but this is a capability. This again is not some bad thing that is happening to you and that should be destroyed so that you get to be what you should be. Distanciation, dissociation, differentiation, division, all the things that we associate to trauma response, for instance, they are the absolutely vital skills of survival in this world. If you translate them into physical actions, you have a threat coming, your ability to distantiate, which means to run away or keep your distance or move around it, is paramount. Your ability to see things or hear things and not take them for yourself right away is an ability to dissociate. You break down the alliance of unity that you have with something that could be a part of your extended definition of self. So someone is hurting, and you're the only one who can operate or who can help. You have several choices. You associate completely with the feelings, the emotions, with the pain of a person, and you're disabled in much the same way as the person is disabled. Or you find a way to dissociate, to differentiate. I am not this person. And so if I am not this person, if I do not associate completely my feelings and my perceptions to what this person is living right now, then I can differentiate my actions. I can do things that the person now is not able to do due to her state. This example was giving an external person, but it's exactly the same thing that happens inside. I get tortured or raped or get into an accident, get into something really, really bad. Either all my psyche is completely submerged and swallowed and broken, or I leave one part of me to live this through. So I keep a thin layer of consciousness that would allow me to escape at one point. Because the obvious answers, like the famous reactions to stress or to any situations, could be fight, flight, freeze, and all the variations of freeze, and then all the different aspects, phone, flop, whatnot. The freeze response could go from fainting, where I retract entirely all consciousness. But if I faint and no awareness is left of the situation, even if the predators that were about to kill me go away for whatever reason, there's nothing I can do, and another one will get me. And not all the time, but so the entire purpose of the freeze response is to maintain a layer of consciousness that can reactivate the rest of the body-mind and run away. But when this thin layer of consciousness is left, most of the consciousness is distanced inside, distanced and partly dissociated, partly differentiated. This distance can be felt actually as a very, very strong thing. It can be felt as though I'm perceiving things from out of my body. And the differentiating can be very strong too. I can get the feeling that what's happening is not happening to me. It's happening to someone else or something else. So in extreme cases, this could lead to division, where prior to this, the link, the anchor and the chains that got the unity back from its division is lost. And each part of the self becomes isolated. So, if we retract again, get back to the topic, this division, distanciation, dissociation, differentiation, they can be applied mentally, physically, emotionally, energetically, socially, psychically. Spiritually would be a bit more complex, but for now it will suffice. Distancing physically is quite simple, so fleeing, moving away. Distancing energetically is a bit of the same feel, but slightly more subtle. So it's moving, the flowing, the feeling of the moving rather than the actual static perception of matter. and distancing emotionally is what we call taking perspective, or seeing something from afar, taking the big picture and whatnot. The big picture comes with moving back, stepping out of the situation. Many things like this. Distancing mentally is I get completely locked into something. I cannot see out or think out of the box, out of the situation, and I need to step out. I need to walk away from what's locking me. Distancing socially is a very common response that's oftentimes very needed to be able to experience one's individual life without the full burden of a family, a lineage, or a society. So distancing socially, for instance, is moving away, migrating during a war. And quite often, if the opportunity arises, it's a pretty good idea. If you do not do that, then you'll have to distance or dissociate in many other ways. Differentiating would be the same. So one way of differentiating during a war, you have the dominated side and the dominating side. If you on the dominated side, you can differentiate yourself by saying you're not part of this side and defecting to the winning side. Something can be judged in many ways, but it's a very, very basic strategy of survival. And many of us who think of all our bravery and whatnot, if the right conditions are met, most likely we would do exactly that. The right conditions may not be our own safety and survival, but it could be that people we love, things we love. So always needed to put in perspective. So we saw focusing, we saw expanding, pushing to the borders, the extremities. Then we saw distributing. And we can do that here, for instance, you get this field, now you apply pressure. This pressure will concentrate, it will push the fabric of your hand, as though it's cloth, and make a tunnel, make a funnel shape, and concentrate towards the end of this funnel shape. And now, instead of leaving this be, you could spread the fabric, so that would be giving vector forces to so spreading the fabric could be making the matter rigid and straight, spreading the energy, spreading the change, the movement, would be giving vector forces in all directions. So now the same pressure is diverted to many different directions. Or it could be you do not do anything with matter or energy. you take the feeling of this pressure under your finger and you equalize it, you spread it to all the parts of your hands, as though you're stretching this from the inside, but without shifts in the actual matter. And you can spread it to your entire body. Or to the entire room. Now what you could do for perception, you can do for thinking, and you can do for consciousness. Prior to consciousness, you can do it for attention, awareness, vigilance. So this is a short, so you can meditate on a candle, you can meditate on one inside point in yourself, you can meditate on any process, any movement, you can meditate on a place or piece of matter, you can meditate on a movement, flow, a circulation, an action, you can meditate on an information. So you can meditate on a sentence or a book. That's the meditation aspect. That's in Christianity, for instance. It seldom refers to meditating on breath or whatnot. You can meditate on whatever size of content and bring all your awareness to it, bring all your attention to it, bring all your mind to it, bring any part of your mental feeling. And the same could be applied to, you could bring all your energy to it, and you could even bring all your matter to it, which would be a bit, you put all the parts, all the population of your body-mind, or of the inner territory of what you feel as being yourself, your definition of self, and you can apply it to this thinking. You can think with your guts, with your feet, with your hands. You can even think with what's outside of you. Just by the same aspect, you can spread pain or pressure or whatnot as an information and share it and distribute it so that it's less concentrated. And you can do the same with an actual activity that you're having. You can spread your thinking. You're reading something, it's all stuck in your head, and now you're spreading the reading to the entirety of your body, and then a bubble of air beyond, and more, or to below the ground. That's just a few ideas which, as pure information not applied, will not lead to anything or will seem just completely outlandish. But if you just try, you'll discover most likely that most of the things are not difficult at all. These are very simple capabilities. They're hidden in plain sight. We do not access them because we are told in the corridors of our mental hospital, you have very loud voices telling you that you are this or that and you can or cannot do this or that. Most of the times it's you are nothing and you can do nothing. It's not turning it into you are God, you can do anything you want, won't really help most of the time. It's the same affirmation reversed, although on some level both affirmations would be entirely true. You are nothing, you are the divine, or you are what you'd call a God or everything. The matter is the definition of the you. The small you, the small me is not everything. The small tiny part of consciousness that accesses the thinking and the willing is not the universe. The big you, the big me, the ever-expanding or all-encompassing unified field of consciousness is everything, can do everything. The only problem too is it can do everything, but it doesn't have the wants of the small you. So play with it if you want, and see you next time.